"You don't get a say, Mom. This is my house." He said it loud enough that even the kids stopped chewing, loud enough for his wife to close the dishwasher a little too quickly, and loud enough for my ears to ring the rest of the evening. It was over something small, silly, really. Elliot, the younger one, had spilled his juice again. Mark, my son, snapped, sharp, louder than needed. I just asked gently if he could not yell quite so much in front of the boys. I didn't mean to interfere. I didn't raise my voice. But apparently, I overstepped. I sat through the rest of dinner in silence. The roast was dry, the beans overcooked, but I chewed and nodded and smiled when the boys talked. Pretended I wasn't slowly dissolving from the inside out. After the dishes, I went up to the guest room, the one they said would be just for me when I moved in after my fall. It used to be Mark's office. Now it had a twin bed, a dresser too wide for the wall, and curtains that didn't quite shut out the streetlight. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my hands. They were shaking. I wasn't angry. Not really. Just undone. There's a difference. It had only been 6 months since I moved in. After the hip fracture, after the rehab, after the quiet conversations where everyone agreed it made the most sense. "You'll be safer with us, Mom," Julie had said. "You won't have to worry about stairs or shopping or bills." What they didn't say was, "You'll also give up your keys, your routine, your control." I tried to be grateful. I told myself I was lucky. They cleared out a room. They changed their schedule. Julie worked from home most days. Mark helped me get set up with my medications and my accounts, and I helped too. Of course I did. That's what mothers do. I helped with the kids, school pickup, homework, dinner prep. I paid for the new dishwasher when the old one broke. I covered half the cost for the private tutor Elliot needed in the spring, quietly, without fanfare. I was also the one who handed Mark a check for $60,000 when they found this new house, the one with the fenced yard and the extra bedrooms. He said it was just a loan. I said nothing. Julie called it a family investment. I smiled. But now, sitting in that room, I felt like a guest. Worse than a guest, an obligation. I looked around. The books I'd brought from my old apartment sat untouched on the shelf. The robe I'd hung on the back of the door looked foreign in this house. I opened the drawer of the nightstand. Inside, a notepad with someone else's handwriting. Probably Julie's. I closed it quietly and stared out the window. Downstairs, I heard voices. Julie's laugh, soft and apologetic. Mark saying something too fast to catch. I imagined them cleaning up, maybe already forgetting the sting of what he'd said. Or not forgetting, just brushing it aside, like they often did when it came to me. It wasn't the first time he'd spoken sharply, but it was the first time he made it clear. I was a visitor, and visitors don't get to parent. Except I'm not a visitor. I'm his mother. I raised that boy. I nursed him through chickenpox and heartbreak. I worked double shifts after his father died so he could finish college without debt. I sat in court with him when he fought for custody during his first divorce. And when he got this house he just claimed so forcefully, I was the one who helped secure the down payment. But now, I'm not allowed an opinion. Not even when a little boy is being yelled at for spilling juice. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe an hour. Long enough for the house to go quiet. Long enough for the boys to fall asleep. For Julie to turn off the living room light. At some point, I stood. I moved slowly. The hip still ached in the evenings. I opened the closet and pulled out the small safe I kept on the floor. Inside were a few documents, a bank statement, my medical directives, a folder from my lawyer. I stared at them for a long time. Then I took out my notepad and began making a list. It wasn't long, just 5 things. Call the bank, contact the attorney, check investment account balances, locate my birth certificate, find a place to go. I didn't know if I was really going to leave. Not yet. But for the first time in months, I thought about what it would mean to choose myself again, to stop explaining, to stop apologizing, to stop waiting for someone to treat me like I mattered. I slid the list into the folder and turned off the light. Tomorrow, I'd decide. The fall happened on a Tuesday, just after lunch. I'd been reaching for a jar on the top shelf, foolish, I know, and the chair I stood on wobbled. 1 second, I was upright. The next, I was staring at the ceiling tiles with a scream lodged in my throat. The pain was sharp, immediate, and unapologetic. I remember trying to drag myself to the phone. I didn't make it far. It was the upstairs neighbor, Pam, who heard something and called 911. Kind woman. Always brings me rhubarb pie in summer. That was 7 months ago. The hospital stay blurred into rehab. The rehab blurred into discussions. Everyone meant well. They always do. Mark came by the second day, flowers in one hand, worry plastered on his face. "You scared the hell out of us," he said. Julie followed him in, holding a tote bag with a puzzle book and lip balm. We sat there, the 3 of us, in that beige room with the noisy hallway. I remember trying to smile. I hate looking like I need anything. After a week, the conversations began. "It's just too risky for you to live alone, Mom. You shouldn't be worrying about bills or cooking meals. We've got space now, with the new place. The guest room would be perfect for you. And the worst one. You'd have your own corner, of course. Your own corner." Like I was a piece of furniture they were trying to find a spot for. Still, I said yes. Because it did make sense. Because they sounded sincere. Because I couldn't bear another winter in that apartment, climbing those stairs on bad knees, microwaving soup at 8 p.m. and calling it dinner. So I packed up my life. 42 years in that place. I sold most of the furniture, donated what I could, boxed up the rest, and had it put in storage. Just until I find out if I like it there, I told myself. I left the lease in Mark's name, just in case. The first few weeks at their house were strange, like waking up in someone else's story. They were kind, attentive. Julie set up my bathroom with fresh towels and lavender soap. The boys made welcome cards. Elliot stuck his drawing on my door with 3 magnets and called it Grandma's office. We found a rhythm. Mornings, I'd sit with the boys before school, make sure they ate more than cereal dust. I started folding laundry, cleaning out the fridge, trimming the garden roses when I had the energy. Nobody asked me to. I just wanted to contribute. Mark insisted I stop paying rent. "Your family," he said. But I paid for groceries often. Quietly picked up the tab at restaurants. Gave Julie a little envelope when the car broke down. Then came the dishwasher. Theirs had been sputtering for months. I noticed Julie washing pans by hand one evening, wrist aching from tendinitis. The next day, I ordered a new one. Paid in full. Had it installed while they were at work. Julie cried when she saw it. Mark just hugged me, called me the family MVP. I told myself it meant something. A few weeks later, Mark brought up the house. "We've been looking," he said over coffee. "Something with a bit more room, maybe closer to Elliot's school." I nodded. It made sense. The kitchen was tight, the driveway a mess of scraped bumpers. He hesitated before the next part. "We found a place. It's a stretch, though, even with our savings and the bank pre-approval. I understood. I always do. How much are you short? I asked. He blinked as if surprised I'd offer. Maybe he was waiting for me to say no. 60, he said. It would be a loan, Mom. I promise. I didn't ask about interest. I didn't ask for paperwork. I just wrote the check. That night, Julie opened a bottle of wine. We toasted to family. The kids danced around the living room. It felt like something good. But looking back, it was a turning point. Not just for them, for me. Because that money, it didn't just go toward the house. It changed how they saw me. Not as someone who needed care, but as someone who owed it to them, who could now be expected to stay quiet, stay agreeable, stay out of the way. After we moved in, and yes, because I helped them get here, I noticed the shift. Little things. Julie stopped knocking before entering my room. Mark joked about Mom's new kingdom when I tried to arrange my bookshelves. They used my room for storage when guests came. I found boxes labeled Christmas on my armchair. Still, I said nothing. I was a guest in the house I helped buy. Until last night. Until that sentence. This is my house. You don't get a say. It echoed in my mind all night, like a bell you can't unring. By morning, I'd made my choice. The morning after, I moved slowly, not because of the hip, that pain I knew how to handle, but because every movement now felt heavier, like the air itself had changed inside that house. I heard the usual bustle downstairs. Julie packing lunches, the boys arguing about who got the last muffin, Mark's voice sharp and hurried, telling them to hurry up. He always spoke like the clock was an enemy. I didn't go down. Instead, I stayed in my room. The room with the twin bed and the extra boxes, the dusty windowsill, the bookshelf I wasn't allowed to rearrange anymore because it throws off the decor. I waited until the front door slammed, one pair of feet after another. Then silence. Julie worked from home, but she always went for a run after drop-off. Predictable, almost rehearsed. So I crept out. In the kitchen, the breakfast mess still lingered. Cereal bowls, sticky spoons, a half-empty carton of milk sweating on the counter. I cleaned up like I always did. Out of habit. Maybe guilt. Maybe hope. That's the problem with mothers like me. We keep hoping even when there's nothing left to hope for. We mop floors and scrub pans like it'll make someone love us better. As I rinsed the dishes, I remembered the early days. How grateful they all seemed to have me here. Julie used to call me her teammate. The boys would climb into my bed with their picture books. Mark would bring me chamomile tea at night. Now, I was a fixture, a background extra in their show. After I finished in the kitchen, I sat at the dining table. The sunlight poured in through the blinds, catching the edge of a crayon drawing taped to the wall. Elliot's work. A wobbly house, a stick-figure family. I looked closer. 4 people. No gray hair, no glasses. No one that looked like me. I felt something crack, quietly. Mid-morning, Julie returned. Her footsteps were light, almost floaty. I stayed seated. When she came into the kitchen and saw me, she smiled, but it was tight. "Hey, Jeanette," she said, reaching for her water bottle. "Everything okay?" I nodded. "Just cleaning up." She glanced at the table. "Oh, thank you." I meant to get to it, but it's all right. She hesitated. Mark was a little tense last night. I'm sure he didn't mean to snap. I gave a non-committal hum. She paused, opened the fridge, took out a container of cut melon. "He's been under a lot of pressure at work. Deadlines, you know." Another hum from me. She chewed a piece of melon like it might save her from finishing the conversation. I watched her, this woman who called me mom only when she wanted something. Her manicure was fresh. Her eyes darted away from mine. Then she said it. He just gets overwhelmed sometimes. It's hard being a dad, a husband, a provider. I looked at her, really looked. And in that moment, I realized something. They truly believed their burden was heavier than mine, that I was lucky to be here, that my presence was charity. I stood up. My chair scraped against the wood floor. Julie blinked. Going somewhere? I need to get some air, I said. Stretch my legs. Want me to come? No. She stepped back, surprised. Okay, well, let me know if you need anything. I didn't answer. Just took my purse, the old black one with the broken zipper, and walked out the door. The neighborhood was still new to me. Cookie-cutter houses, fresh lawns, mailboxes that matched. I didn't know the names of the people next door. No one here waved. I walked slow, steady. The hip ached, yes, but less than it did last month. Progress. I used that time to think about every little thing I'd done since I moved in, about the time I stayed up sewing new curtains for the boys' room only to have Julie replace them with ones from Target because yours don't match the theme. About the morning I offered to make pancakes and Mark sighed. Just let Julie handle breakfast, Mom. The kids are used to her way. About Elliot whispering, Mom says you're just here for now. Just here for now. That phrase had stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. I reached the small park at the end of the block and sat on a bench in the shade. A young mother passed with a stroller, earbuds in, gaze forward. No nod, no glance. I closed my eyes and let the wind touch my face. When I opened them, I saw an elderly couple across the lawn. She was feeding pigeons. He was holding a small, portable radio. They weren't talking, just sitting close. That used to be me and Walter. And I wondered, if he were here, what would he say about all this? He'd say, Jeanette, you've given enough. It's okay to stop giving now. I sat there until the wind picked up. Then I reached into my purse, pulled out the notepad I'd folded twice the night before, and looked at the list again. Call the bank. Contact the attorney. Check investments. Find a place to go. I tapped the page, once for each item. Then I stood, slower this time. Every step home felt different, like I was walking toward the end of one life and the beginning of something else. Something quieter, but mine. The envelope had been in my drawer for months, cream-colored, thick paper. Mark's name scrawled across the front in my handwriting, the kind that's gotten shakier over the years. Inside, the check. $60,000, dated, signed, uncashed. Because when I handed it to him, he asked, "Do you mind if we hold off depositing it until the sale closes?" I said sure. Of course. What's mine is yours. That's what mothers do, right? But he never gave it back. The next week I saw the house listing online, pending, then sold. And suddenly, we were moving. I'd offered to stay behind during the move, thinking maybe they wanted space. Julie insisted no. They needed me, said I could keep an eye on the boys while she handled the movers. I didn't argue. I never did. It wasn't just the money, it was everything that followed. Mark added me to a joint checking account. For emergencies, he said. But soon, more things started running through it. A water bill here, a car payment there, then Julie's dental work, private swim lessons, new tires, all small things, but they added up. I saw the statements each month. They were polite about it at first. Then the charges stopped being discussed. Just assumed. And me? I didn't ask. Didn't want to seem difficult. Then came the power of attorney. It was Julie's idea. Just in case, she said sweetly. If anything happens, we can act quickly on your behalf. It was a hot day. I remember the notary coming to the house, papers spread across the dining table. Elliot colored at the end of the table while I signed over authority to the people who barely remembered my birthday. I even remember the way Julie poured lemonade into mason jars, as if that made the whole thing feel homey and not like a transaction. I justified it all. They're busy. They mean well. It's just the way life is now. But it wasn't life. It was slow erasure. I started noticing how Julie introduced me to new neighbors. Mark's mom, she's staying with us for a bit. Always staying, never living. And when the real estate agent came by to drop off papers, the one who helped them close on the house, she looked at me and said, "Oh, you must be the one who made it possible." I smiled, said nothing. That night, I cried in the shower, quietly, with the water running so no one would hear. There were other moments that didn't seem like much, until I looked back and saw the pattern, like the day Julie asked me not to rearrange the pantry. It confuses the boys. Or when Mark gently suggested I not bring my books into the living room. Too much clutter. Or the night I offered to make a roast and Julie said, "Let's just keep it simple. The boys like my way better." Each time I nodded. Until one day I realized I wasn't nodding out of agreement. I was nodding out of permission. Permission they thought I needed to exist here. That was the same day I went online and looked up the power of attorney document. I wanted to see what I'd actually signed. I read every word. Then I opened a new tab and searched for the number of my old lawyer, the one Walter and I used when we set up our wills. That was 2 weeks ago. Now, as I sat on the edge of my bed, I pulled open the drawer and took out the envelope with the check. It was still there, untouched. My fingers ran over the raised ink. Uncashed didn't mean unused. They hadn't taken it to the bank, but they'd spent it all the same. Counted it as theirs. My jaw clenched. I tucked the envelope into my purse and reached for the folder with my documents. Birth certificate, passport, health insurance card. I checked off item number 4 on the list. Then I called the lawyer's office. A young voice answered. "Good morning, Thurman and Associates. This is Jeanette Harris," I said. "I'd like to make an appointment. I need to update my documents and revoke some things." There was a pause. Then, "Of course, Ms. Harris. Do you need a notary?" "Yes." I set the phone down and felt something shift in my chest. Something like breath returning to a place that had gone hollow. There was one more call to make. I dialed my bank. "Hi, this is Jeanette Harris. I need to make changes to my accounts." The man on the other end was polite, professional. He confirmed my identity, then listened as I explained. "I want to remove my son from joint access, and I'd like to freeze any automatic transfers." "All of them, ma'am?" "Yes, every single one." Another pause. "Very well, I'll process that immediately. Do you want to revoke the power of attorney as well?" "Yes," I said, and my voice didn't shake. When I hung up, I sat very still. Then I stood, crossed the room, and opened the window. The breeze was cool. Outside, kids rode bikes down the sidewalk, yelling to each other, summer energy bubbling up from the pavement. I looked down at the driveway. Mark's car was gone. Julie was probably on another conference call. And me? I was planning my exit quietly, without drama. Just a woman reclaiming what was hers. My birthday came and went without a word. No card, no cake, not even a phone call. I sat through the day pretending I'd forgotten too. Made myself oatmeal. Watched the news. Answered a call from Diane, my old neighbor from the apartment, who remembered the date without a calendar. We talked for nearly an hour. When I hung up, I stared at the phone. No missed calls, no texts. That evening, I went down for dinner as usual. The table was already set. Chicken tenders, corn, boxed mashed potatoes. Julie chatted with the boys about their field trip. Mark scrolled through his phone. I waited. Halfway through the meal, Elliot turned to me. "Grandma, is it true you used to have a dog?" I smiled. "Yes, a little terrier named Boots. He used to—" Mark cut in. "We've talked about this, Elliot. No dogs. Allergies, remember?" I went quiet. Julie passed the ketchup. And that was it. Nothing. After dinner, I brought my plate to the sink, washed it quietly, and went back upstairs. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark. No candles, no card shoved under my door with crayon hearts. Not even a "we forgot, sorry." Just silence. That night, I cried again. Not because it hurt, but because I finally saw it clearly. I wasn't part of this family. I was part of the furniture. Useful. Neutral. Quiet. The next morning, Julie knocked on my door. "You need anything from the store?" she asked. "I'm taking the boys to Target." I smiled thinly. "No, I'm good." She lingered. "Mark's been under a lot of pressure lately. He's not himself." I nodded. "I understand." But I didn't. Not anymore. Because even pressure doesn't make you forget your mother's birthday. That weekend, I overheard Mark on the phone with his friend, Greg. "It's not a bad deal," he was saying. "I mean, we basically got the down payment covered and she helps with the kids. We've saved thousands." Thousands. That was the word he used to describe my presence. Not mom. Not support. Not even love. Just a number on a spreadsheet. I closed the door softly and sat back down. Something inside me had gone numb. Later that evening, I brought down a photo album. The old kind, leather-bound, pages thick with age. I laid it open on the kitchen table. Mark glanced at it as he passed by. "What's that?" "Just some old pictures," I said. He nodded, didn't stop. Julie didn't even ask. I sat there turning the pages, Walter in his work boots, Mark with jelly on his cheeks, me holding the birthday cake I made from scratch when he turned 10. I traced my finger along the plastic. 48 birthdays, I remembered. I counted. He'd missed one, just one. But it was enough. Because it wasn't just the date. It was the ease with which it slipped past him, the convenience of forgetting. The next morning, I woke up early, walked to the mailbox before the sun was fully up. The air smelled like wet grass and last night's sprinklers. There was a letter from my bank. Confirmation of the account change. Authorization revoked. Power returned to me. I folded it carefully and tucked it into my purse. At breakfast, I poured myself coffee and sat at the end of the table. Julie was spooning yogurt into bowls. Mark sipped orange juice, scrolling his phone again. "Elliot," Julie said, "don't forget your backpack today." I waited. Then I cleared my throat. "Mark, did something happen to the calendar?" He looked up. "What?" "Just wondered if it glitched. Sometimes birthdays don't show up." He stared at me for a beat too long, then looked away. Julie froze at the sink. "Oh no," she said. "Jeanette, it's all right," I said quickly. "Honestly, just slipped your minds. These things happen." "No, really," Mark said. but it was already fading from his voice. "We'll do something this weekend." But I knew they wouldn't, because if it mattered, they'd have remembered. I stood up, finished my coffee, and placed the cup gently in the sink. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock. Then I reached for the envelope again, the one with the check, still tucked beside my bank letter. 60,000, and not even a card. Elliot didn't mean to say it. He was 7. 7-year-olds don't carry secrets well, especially not the ones whispered behind kitchen doors when they think no one's listening. We were in the garden. He'd brought out his little notebook, the one with the puppy on the cover. We were pretending it was a science log. "Observation 1, he wrote, tongue poking out. "Grandma waters the rosemary with too much water." I laughed. "You little traitor." He giggled and pressed the pencil harder. "Observation 2, Grandma talks to plants when no one's around." "Don't tell your mom," I whispered. "She'll make me go back inside." "She already wants you to," he said absently. I paused. "What do you mean?" He didn't look up. "She told Dad she thought you'd be temporary, that maybe by summer you'd have your own place." I don't know what face I made, but it was enough for Elliot to stop mid-scribble. "Am I not supposed to say that?" he asked. "No, it's all right," I said, smiling thinly. "You didn't do anything wrong." He stared at me a moment longer, then looked back at his page and whispered, "Observation 3. Grandma looks sad." I ruffled his hair. "Add one more. Grandma is stronger than she looks." That night, I stood in the hallway after the boys had gone to bed. I heard Mark and Julie in the kitchen, their voices low, close. "I'm just saying," Julie said. "This was never supposed to be long-term." "She's not hurting anything," Mark replied. "She helps with the kids." "Yes, but she's always here. The boys are getting confused. Elliot called her Mom last week at dinner." There was a pause, then a soft, muffled laugh from Mark. "She bought the house, Jules. I mean, she didn't buy it. You know what I mean." "Exactly," she said. "And that's why we need to be careful. It's not healthy for them to think she's part of everything. She's just here. For now. Just here. For now." I backed away from the door, silent. In my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the pile of folded laundry I'd done that morning. Julie's yoga pants, Mark's gym socks. I'd even matched them into pairs like I used to when he was 10. The drawer where I kept my own clothes stuck when I opened it. The runners were off, and no one had bothered to fix it. I tugged until it gave way, then stared at the stack inside. 3 blouses, 2 pairs of pants, the nightgown Walter bought me 15 years ago. That's all I'd brought. They told me I didn't need much. Julie had said, "We'll buy you new things, something that fits this house better." As if my sweaters didn't match the countertops. As if my life needed to be trimmed down to fit their aesthetic. I took the list from under my pillow. It had creases now, the corners softened from folding and unfolding. 4 things crossed off. 1 remained. Find a place to go. That night, I opened the browser on my tablet and typed in retirement communities with private units. One popped up not far from my old apartment, still in the city, still on the bus line, with a small cafe on site and a garden club. The pictures weren't flashy, just honest. I bookmarked it. The next day, I called. "Hello, this is Sunrise Pines. How can I help you?" "This is Jeanette Harris. I'm looking for independent living, 1 bedroom, quiet, not too far from the library." The woman on the phone sounded cheerful. "We've got 2 open units, Ms. Harris. Would you like to come see them?" Yes, I said. Tomorrow, quietly. She paused. Of course. I didn't tell Mark or Julie. I told them I had a doctor's appointment. Julie offered to drive. I declined. Just a quick checkup, I said. I'll take a cab. I arrived 10 minutes early. The building was warm, nothing grand. Beige walls, worn carpet. But the woman at the desk smiled with her whole face. She walked me down the hallway to a small corner unit. The window overlooked a courtyard with an old oak tree. I stood there a long time. The woman didn't interrupt. After a while, I turned to her. How soon could I move in? She smiled. We can hold it for a week. Just let us know. I nodded. In the cab back, I kept my purse clutched tight on my lap. Inside, the folder, the envelope, the list. That night, after the boys were in bed, I sat at the kitchen table while Mark scrolled through the news. Julie was upstairs, folding laundry. I slid the photo album toward him. He looked up. What's this? Your childhood, I said. In case you've forgotten. He opened it slowly, stared at the first page, then looked up at me. Mom. I stood. I'll be going soon, I said softly. You won't have to worry about how long I'm staying. He didn't speak, didn't ask when, didn't ask where, just stared, as if he couldn't quite believe I meant it. But I did. I meant it with everything I had left. It wasn't the shouting itself that surprised me. It was how normal it felt to everyone else. We were all at the dinner table. Elliot had been fidgeting with his napkin. Tim, the older one, was poking at his green beans like they were radioactive. I reached for the breadbasket and said gently, Boys, let's keep hands on the table, please. Mark looked up, jaw tight. Can we just have one meal without commentary? He snapped. I blinked. I wasn't criticizing, This is my house, he said, loud enough to rattle the salt shaker. You don't get a say. The room went still. Julie froze with a spoon halfway to her mouth. Tim looked down. Elliot's eyes welled up. No one said a word. I put the bread back down, slowly. I don't need help parenting, he added. I've got it handled. The sentence was a slap, but the way he said it, like he'd been waiting to say it, that's what hurt. Julie stood up first. I'll clear the plates. No one's done eating, I said, quieter than I meant. It's fine, she mumbled, already scraping food into the trash. Elliot got up next. He didn't say a word, just left the table and went upstairs. Tim followed. Mark didn't apologize. He picked up his fork, stabbed a piece of chicken, and chewed with too much purpose. I watched him, watched this man I'd raised, this boy I once carried through airports and hospital lobbies, this baby whose temperature I checked every hour when he had the flu at age 6. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. I rose without finishing my plate. Upstairs, I closed the door to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. For a long time, I didn't move. My hands rested in my lap, fingers intertwined, knuckles pale. That night, I didn't cry. I just packed. Quietly. Deliberately. My suitcase wasn't large. I hadn't brought much to begin with. A few outfits, some books, a jewelry box Walter gave me on our 20th anniversary, a folded photo of my parents, one shawl. The rest I'd given away or left behind when I moved in. I'd told myself I didn't need them anymore. I was wrong. At midnight, I opened my desk drawer and took out the small box of keys, storage unit, bank lockbox, my old apartment mailbox. I ran my finger across each one, checking the little paper labels I'd taped to them years ago. I slipped them into the purse next to the check. Then I sat in the armchair by the window and waited for morning. I didn't sleep. At 5:30, I changed into clean clothes. Slacks, a soft blouse, the cardigan with the elbow patches. Nothing fancy, just mine. By 6:15, I was downstairs. Julie came into the kitchen in her robe, her hair pulled back. She blinked when she saw the suitcase by the door. Going somewhere? Yes, I said simply. I've made arrangements. Her lips parted slightly, then closed. You're leaving? I nodded. Is this about last night? Jeanette, he didn't mean… I think he did. She moved to the coffee machine, fiddled with it like she didn't know where to place her hands. You've been part of this household. The kids will be… I think they'll be okay, I said. I won't be far. Julie bit her lip. Should I wake him? No, I said. Let him sleep. I've already said enough. A cab pulled into the driveway at 6:35. The driver helped me load the suitcase. Julie stood on the porch, arms folded. Will you call? She asked. I paused. If they ask for me, yes? She nodded. Her eyes looked tired, or maybe just relieved. As we pulled away, I didn't look back at the house, not because I didn't care, but because I wanted to remember it as it had been, when I arrived, hopeful. Not as it was now, when I left, silent. The cab took me to a little diner near the retirement community. I had 2 hours before my appointment. I ordered eggs, toast, coffee. The waitress called me sweetheart and brought me strawberry jam without asking. Across from me, an older man read the paper with trembling hands. He dropped his spoon. I leaned over and picked it up. Thank you, he whispered. Of course, I said. We smiled at each other, two strangers who knew what it meant to be overlooked. At 9 sharp, I arrived at Sunrise Pines. The woman at the desk greeted me like an old friend. Ms. Harris, we've got everything ready. The room's clean, the keys are waiting. Take your time settling in. I followed her down the hallway. My new space was small. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette. A sliding glass door that opened onto a patio with a single bench and a view of the oak tree. But it was mine. I unpacked slowly, savoring the sound of drawers that didn't stick, cabinets that hadn't been claimed by someone else's cereal boxes. I laid my books on the shelf, hung my shawl by the door, placed the jewelry box on the nightstand, and then I sat. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt still. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew this. I'd stopped waiting to be welcome. I'd gone and built something of my own. The air outside Sunrise Pines smelled like fresh mulch and clean laundry. There was a courtyard in the middle of the building, not much more than a rectangle of grass and some benches. But to me, it felt like a field. There were flowers, too, low-maintenance ones, pansies, daylilies, marigolds. I sat there that first afternoon, coat buttoned, purse in my lap, just breathing. No one asked me to move. No one hovered. No one watched what I ate or offered unsolicited advice about my salt intake. It was quiet. A good, thick kind of quiet. By evening, I'd met 2 neighbors, Lenore, who walked with a blue cane and baked too many muffins, and Arthur, a retired math teacher who insisted on calling me ma'am even after I told him to stop. I went back to my room after dinner. My own room. Mine. I took off my shoes without worrying if they'd be in someone's way. I put the kettle on, sat on the couch, opened my notebook, and started writing. Not a journal. I've never been one for diaries. But a list. A new one. Things I can do now. Open and close a window whenever I please. Watch what I want on TV. Leave a book on the kitchen table without anyone moving it. Say nothing all day and not feel like I've disappointed anyone. Or say everything and not worry if it's too much. Halfway through the list, my phone buzzed. Call from Mark. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. He didn't leave a message, not even a text. I set the phone down and made my tea. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Call from Julie. This time, I answered. Jeanette. Her voice was tight, pitched too high. Yes. We just got an alert from the bank. It says the joint account's been restricted. That's correct. She was quiet a moment. I thought we agreed. We didn't agree, I said calmly. You suggested. I accepted. But that's over now. You didn't say anything. I didn't think I needed permission to close something that belonged to me. Silence. I'm sorry, she said finally. If we crossed a line, you didn't cross it, I said. You built a fence around it, then told me I should be grateful for the view. Another long pause. Where are you? She asked. I'm somewhere safe, I replied. Somewhere peaceful. The boys are asking. That caught me. I closed my eyes. Tell them I'm fine. Tell them I love them. I'll have Mark call. I'd rather he didn't. Not yet. Julie exhaled, sharp and short. You know, she said quietly, he's really bad at apologies. I know, I said. So am I. That's how we ended up here. I ended the call gently. No anger, no spike in my voice. Just done. I left the phone on the kitchen counter and sat back down with my tea. The next morning, I called the wedding agency. Carrie, the same young woman who handled all their event planning, answered. Pearl Weddings, Carrie speaking. Hi, Carrie. This is Jeanette Harris. A pause. Then, Mrs. Harris. Hi? I'd like to cancel all pending payments related to the Harper's wedding, effective immediately. Another pause. I'm sorry. I thought the event was already confirmed. Isn't the banquet in 2 weeks? It is, I said. But the financial arrangement has changed. Please check your records. I'm the primary sponsor. Yes, of course. That's very unusual. I imagine it is. I'll need to inform the vendors, she said slowly, and the couple. That's fine. I'm sure they'll figure it out. Another silence. Then a soft, Mrs. Harris? May I ask what happened? I hesitated, not out of shame, just fatigue. They forgot who they were dealing with, I said. That's all. After I hung up, I called the bank. Richard, my personal banker, recognized my voice. Mrs. Harris, we've begun the reversal procedures you requested. Good. One more thing. I want to open a new trust account. Of course. In whose name? I didn't even pause. My granddaughter, Justine Harper. She's 12. Richard was quiet a second. Then, that's a beautiful idea. We discussed the details, restricted access, education-only disbursements, long-term growth. When I hung up, I made another list. What I'm leaving behind. A house where I was invisible. A family that confused love with convenience. My own silence. What I'm taking with me. Peace. A few good pictures. The part of myself I'd nearly forgotten. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Justine. Hi, Grandma. Dad said, you moved. Can I come visit sometime? I miss you. I smiled, typed back. You can always visit me, sweetheart. I'll save you a muffin. The knock came just after 10 a.m. I knew who it would be. I'd been expecting him ever since the account froze, ever since the trust paperwork was filed, ever since Julie's voice wavered over the phone like a dropped plate midair. He wouldn't send her to handle it. He'd come himself. I opened the door to find Mark standing in the hallway, eyes tired, jacket slung over one shoulder. He looked like a man rehearsing lines in a language he didn't quite speak. "Hi, Mom." "Mark?" He stepped inside without asking. I didn't stop him. He looked around the apartment, small, clean, sunlit, like he was assessing damage after a storm. "You really did it," he said. I sat down. "I did." He remained standing, hands still on his jacket, as if unsure whether to stay or bolt. "You could have told us," he said. "I tried," I replied. "You weren't listening." He sat finally across from me at the little kitchen table. The same table where I now had breakfast without commentary, where I read the paper and did crosswords, and didn't wait for someone to sigh about how I folded it. He cleared his throat. "Julie's upset. I imagine she is. She says you embarrassed us. I didn't do anything in public. The vendors are calling. The wedding planner said she almost cried." I looked at him. "Is that what brought you here, Mark? The wedding planner's feelings?" His face shifted then. A flicker of something real, just for a second. "No," he said. "That's not why I came." I waited. "I came because I don't understand what happened." I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, out of disbelief, out of the sheer absurdity of how blind someone can be when it benefits them. "Mark," I said slowly, "you told me, in front of my grandchildren, that I don't get a say in your house. After I raised you. After I paid for that house. After I moved in to help." He opened his mouth, but I kept going. "You stopped seeing me as a person. I became a wallet, a babysitter, a placeholder. And you thought I'd stay because I always have." He leaned back, exhaling hard. "We didn't mean to make you feel that way." "But you did." He rubbed his face. "I know we forgot your birthday. That was just the tip of it." He nodded, shame coloring his face now. Not a full apology, but something close. "I didn't think you'd actually leave," he said quietly. "I know. I didn't think you'd take the money back." It was never gone. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he asked, "Where did you go that night?" "To Diane's. Remember her? From the old building. She had a fold-out couch." He looked stunned. "You didn't tell anyone?" "I didn't owe you an itinerary, Mark." Another pause. Then, more hesitantly, "Are you happy here?" I looked around. The small bookshelf. The stack of magazines. The little teapot I'd bought with Walter in '84. The framed photo of the boys, still displayed, still mine. "Yes," I said. "I'm peaceful here." He nodded, looked down. After a moment, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the envelope. The envelope. The one I gave him months ago. Uncashed. Slightly bent now, still sealed. "I never deposited it," he said. "I know." He slid it across the table. "I don't want this anymore." I didn't touch it. "It was a gift. You're the one who turned it into a debt." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it. The child still in him, the one who used to climb into my lap when his knees were scraped. He said nothing for a long time. Finally, he stood. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "You start by not asking me to fix it for you." He nodded slowly. "I'll tell the boys you're doing okay. They can ask me themselves." He managed half a smile. "Elliot said you promised him a muffin." "I did." He lingered at the door. "Do you need anything?" he asked. "No," I said, steady. "For once, I don't." He left quietly. I watched him go from the window. Not with anger, not even sorrow, just clarity. He was still my son, but I wasn't his shadow anymore. 2 days later, I got a letter. Not a text, not a voicemail. A real letter, envelope, stamp, and all. The handwriting was uneven, the lines wobbly. I knew before I opened it that it wasn't from Mark or Julie. It was from Elliot. Dear Grandma, I miss you. Mom says you're resting. Dad says you're thinking. I think maybe they don't know. You left because someone made you sad. I don't know if it was me. I hope not. Please write back. Can I come see you? I'm okay with muffins, but also grilled cheese. Love, Elliot. I held the letter against my chest longer than I needed to, not because it broke me, because it held me together. That afternoon, I replied, Dear Elliot, you did nothing wrong, not ever. I left because grown-ups forgot how to be kind, and sometimes we need to go away to remind them. I would love for you to visit. Bring your notebook. I'll bring the grilled cheese. And maybe I'll show you how to talk to Rosemary without getting caught. Love always, Grandma. I mailed it before I could change my mind. Lenore caught me at the mailbox. Fan mail already? She teased. Just a reminder, I said. Of what? That it's still worth believing in people, even when they disappoint you. She patted my arm. You've got the good kind of bones, Jeanette. Back inside, I sat at my table and opened the notebook again. I made a new list. Things I don't miss. The feeling of being in the way. The careful silence. The sound of a grown son shouting like he's 12 again. Being thanked only when money changed hands. Folding towels I never used. Things I still grieve. Not saying goodbye to the boys properly. The look on Julie's face when I left. Equal parts guilt and relief. Mark, once small enough to carry. The version of me who thought loyalty meant silence. Around 6 p.m., the front desk buzzed. It was Arthur, holding a chessboard. You play? He asked. I used to, I said. Well, he smiled. I'm old and slow. Should be a fair match. We played 3 games. I lost the first, won the second, and let him think he won the third. After he left, I sat by the window. It had rained. The light pooled in the cracks of the walkway outside, and a single pigeon strutted near the bench like it owned the place. I watched it, amused. Then my phone rang. Call from unknown. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me answered. Hello? Mrs. Harris? Yes. This is Clara, the woman said. From your old building, I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all, Clara. How are you? Well, I'm calling because there's a bit of mail here with your name on it. And also I found something else. In the basement storage. Oh? A box, she said. With your name, labeled kitchen. But it's not just pots. There's a bunch of notebooks and a quilt. Did you mean to leave it? I pressed my lips together. No, I said. No, I didn't. I can bring it by, she offered. That would be lovely. I gave her the address. We chatted for a moment longer. About the broken elevator, the new neighbor who plays jazz at odd hours, the cat that lives under the fire escape. After I hung up, I sat still for a long time. I remembered packing that box. I'd written kitchen on it so Mark wouldn't ask what was inside. But it wasn't utensils. It was stories. Pieces of me. Memories no one had wanted, so I'd wrapped them in newspaper and sealed them tight. I hadn't expected to get them back. The next day, Clara arrived in a raincoat, box balanced carefully in both arms. I thought you might want this, she said, setting it down gently. I do. She stayed for tea. When she left, I sat cross-legged on the rug and opened the box. Inside, spiral notebooks, scribbled recipes, a few greeting cards Walter had sent me during their first year of marriage. One with a drawing of a dog that said, "Still barking for you." And under it all, the quilt. Threadbare in places, frayed at the edges, but stitched with every year of our life. I pulled it into my lap and let it drape over my knees. For the first time since leaving that house, I felt whole. Not because I'd regained something, but because I finally knew what I'd never lost. The quilt stayed on my armchair after that. Every morning, I folded it neatly. Every evening, I pulled it over my legs, even when it wasn't cold. It wasn't for warmth. It was for remembering. Walter's old flannel shirts sewn in squares, pieces of Elliot's baby blanket stitched into a corner, a faded patch from the dress I wore the day we brought Mark home from the hospital. It wasn't just cloth. It was evidence that I'd lived, loved, given, that I hadn't been some footnote in other people's lives. A week after Claire's visit, I got a text from Julie. "We're talking to the boys about boundaries. They miss you. Would you be open to seeing them?" I stared at the message for a long while. Then I typed, "I'll meet them, just them, Saturday afternoon." She replied immediately, "Thank you. I'll bring them at 2. I didn't correct her. At 1:55, I stood at the front window. Julie's car pulled in at exactly 2. The boys climbed out, dressed too neatly. Tim had a collared shirt on. He hated those. Elliot wore mismatched socks. I smiled. Julie stayed behind the wheel. She didn't get out. Didn't try to follow them up. That at least she got right. When I opened the door, Elliot ran in first. "Grandma!" he shouted, arms flung wide. I knelt, knees creaking, and pulled him close. Tim followed, more reserved. "Hi," he said, voice low. I kissed his forehead. "Come in, both of you." We sat in the small living room. I'd made lemonade, cut up apples, laid out shortbread cookies on a napkin. "Nice place," Tim said. "It's small. But it smells like you," Elliot said. "Like soap and cinnamon." I smiled. "That's just because I burned toast this morning." We sat together, the 3 of us, for almost an hour, talking about school, friends, Elliot's science notebook, Tim's new bike. They didn't ask why I left. They didn't ask if I was coming back. They just sat close. Listened. At one point, Elliot looked around. "Where's your TV?" "I don't have one," I said. He blinked. "You don't need one?" "No," I said. "I have a window, a kettle, and my own keys." They didn't understand. Not really. But they nodded anyway. At 3, I walked them to the curb. Julie was still in the car, sunglasses on, staring ahead like it was taking every ounce of her restraint not to step out. She rolled the window down as I approached. "Thank you," she said quietly. I nodded. Before the boys climbed in, Tim turned. "Can we come again?" "Of course," I said. "Anytime." Elliot waved out the window until the car turned the corner. I went back inside and sat in the silence they left behind. Not heavy, not empty, just quiet. Later that evening, the phone rang. Mark. I didn't pick up. He didn't leave a message. Instead, he sent a picture, a photo of the boys on the front step of their house, holding a sign that read, "We love you, Grandma." I didn't respond, but I saved it. The next morning, I woke up early and made pancakes, just one batch. No one to feed but me. I ate them slowly, with honey instead of syrup, and read a book cover to cover without being interrupted. Around noon, I went to the common room. Lenore was already there, doing a puzzle. Arthur waved from the far table. "You're glowing," he said. "Too much tea," I replied. He chuckled. We played 2 games of chess. He won the first. I beat him on the second with a rook and 3 pawns. Afterwards, he said, "You know, you're different now." "How so?" "You sit straighter." I thought about that all afternoon. At night, I opened the notebook again. This time, I didn't write a list. I wrote one sentence. I stayed quiet so long I forgot I had a voice. Then I underlined it and turned the page. The invitation came in a cream envelope with gold trim. It was hand-delivered by courier, which struck me as theatrical. The kind of gesture people make when they're trying to undo something with polish instead of sincerity. It was from Mark and Julie. You are warmly invited to celebrate the Harper family's 15th anniversary and housewarming. Join us for an afternoon of food, friends, and memories. Your presence would mean the world. I read it twice. Then I set it on the counter beside my kettle and stared at it until the water boiled. I didn't tear it up, didn't toss it, just left it there, like a stone someone else had decided to put in my pocket. Later that afternoon, Lenore noticed me staring off during our walk. "What's gotten into you?" she asked. "You look like you're solving an equation with no numbers." I told her about the invitation. She clicked her tongue. "They throw you out and now want you back as a centerpiece?" "I don't think they meant to throw me out." "Doesn't matter what they meant," she said, gripping her cane tighter. "Matters what they did." And what they didn't. I didn't say anything. That night, I sat in my room and stared at the photo of the boys, the one they'd sent, holding that sign. I'd put it in a frame. Not fancy, just simple wood. I imagined them at that party, wearing little dress shirts, being paraded around like symbols of a family that had found its footing. I imagined Julie giving a speech, Mark laughing too loudly. I imagined my name not being mentioned, not because they hated me, but because it complicated the story they were telling. I didn't sleep much that night. At 2 a.m., I got up and made tea, sat on the balcony with the quilt over my knees, listened to the night hum around me. Sprinklers, wind through trees, the faint whir of someone's late TV. And I decided I would go. Not for them. For me, not to be included. To be seen. 2 days later, I dressed carefully. Slacks, a soft blouse, pearl earrings Walter gave me for our 30th anniversary. I braided my hair back tight. Looked myself in the mirror and said aloud, "You belong anywhere you walk into." The cab dropped me at their house, the one I helped buy. It looked different now. New landscaping, brighter shutters, a decorative wreath on the door that probably cost more than a week's groceries. People were already inside, laughter, music, glass clinking. I walked up the steps and rang the bell. Julie opened the door. For a moment, she looked stunned. Then she smiled, too quickly, too wide. "Jeanette," she said, "you made it." "I was invited," I said. "Of course," she murmured. "Come in." The house smelled like hors d'oeuvres and scented candles. Strangers milled about, drinks in hand. Some nodded politely. Others glanced and turned away, unsure if I was caterer or kin. Mark spotted me across the room. He made his way over, slowly. "Hi, Mom." "Mark, you look good." "I do." He nodded. "We weren't sure if you'd come." I wasn't either. He didn't ask why I had. I think he knew better than to fish for meaning where he'd buried so many small truths. I didn't linger long. I greeted the boys. Tim hugged me hard. Elliot whispered, "You smell like pancakes." Julie gave a short toast, thanked everyone for being part of their journey, said something about growth, about family, about gratitude. She didn't say my name. But the moment hung long enough that some people glanced toward me anyway. I held my glass, didn't raise it. Then I left. Slipped out while someone started a slideshow on the TV. Pictures of a happy couple, 2 growing boys, a house paid for in part by silence. Outside, The sun was starting to fall behind the rooflines. I stood on the sidewalk for a minute, breathing in the quiet. I didn't cry, didn't rage, just smiled, faintly, at the absurdity of it all. How much effort people put into preserving a version of the truth that keeps them most comfortable. Back home, I slipped off my shoes and put on the kettle. Lenore stopped by later. "How'd it go?" she asked, like a ceremony for a story I didn't write. "Did you leave with anything?" I thought for a second. "Yes," I said. "My name." A week passed, then 2. No calls, no texts, no pictures of the boys. The silence didn't surprise me. I'd seen it coming like a slow tide, the kind that pulls back before the wave. Julie's party had been her final performance, a story sealed shut with smiles and curated memories. My appearance didn't ruin it. It just reminded them the story wasn't entirely theirs. One morning, I got a letter from the school board. Elliot had drawn my name on a classroom art project. A big red heart, Grandma Jeanette inside. The teacher mailed it to me with a sticky note. "He said this belongs with you." I pinned it above my desk. That same afternoon, Lenore knocked on my door. "You're not going to believe this," she said, stepping in without waiting. "Arthur signed us up for the community storytelling night." "He did what?" "He said you tell better stories than the old fool who always talks about his prize tomato." "I haven't told a story in front of people in years." She handed me a flyer. "You'll do fine. It's just 15 minutes. Next Thursday. I folded the paper and placed it under my teacup. That night, I sat with the quilt across my lap and thought about what I might say. Not just what had happened, but what it meant. I didn't want to be the woman who listed her grievances. I wanted to be the woman who showed people what survival sounded like when it was quiet and steady and full of grace. Thursday came faster than I expected. There were 30, maybe 40 people in the rec room, folding chairs, a microphone that squeaked too loud. Someone brought brownies. Arthur spoke first, about being a teacher and learning from students who didn't care about algebra but taught him how to show up anyway. Then it was my turn. I stepped to the front, hands not quite shaking. "I used to believe kindness was about staying quiet," I said, "about waiting, about letting others go first." A few heads nodded. "But kindness without boundaries," I continued, "isn't kindness. It's erasure." I told them about the house, not with bitterness, with facts, about the check, the shouting, the kitchen drawer that never opened right, about what it feels like when the people you love forget you're not furniture. Then I paused, looked around the room, and said, "Leaving wasn't the hardest part. Staying gone was." That last line hung there for a moment. Then someone clapped. Another followed. Soon it was the whole room, not thunderous, but warm. Afterward, a woman I'd never met came up to me and pressed my hand. "That's my daughter-in-law, word for word," she whispered. "I haven't had the courage yet." "Start small," I said. "Start with your name." Back in my room, I made another entry in the notebook. Telling the truth out loud feels like exhaling after years underwater. A few days later, I got a text. From Tim. "Can we come visit again? I think Elliot's gonna explode if he doesn't see you soon." I replied, "Tomorrow. I'll make grilled cheese." They came after school. Elliot had a new notebook, this one with a dragon on the front. He'd written a whole story, apparently. Chapter 1. The Grandma Who Talked to Wind. He read it out loud while Tim ate half the cheese I had in the fridge. When they left, Tim hugged me longer than usual. Mom's still mad, he said. But I don't think she knows why anymore. I stroked his hair. That's not for you to fix, sweetheart. Elliot looked up. Are you ever coming back? I bent down. No, but that doesn't mean I'm gone. He nodded, like he understood. I watched them walk to the car. Julie didn't get out, but this time she waved through the window. Not much, but enough. Later that night, I pulled the check from the drawer. Still sealed? Still mine. I didn't tear it. Didn't cash it. I just looked at it. Then I placed it in a new envelope and wrote one line on the front. For Elliot and Tim, if they ever forget what I gave. Mark showed up unannounced on a Tuesday. No warning, no text. Just his car idling outside the building and then the buzz at the front desk. Lenore peeked out her door when she heard his name. Should I pretend I'm your lawyer? She whispered. No need, I said. Let him come. He looked older than he had a month ago. Maybe not in years, but in edges. His shoulders sloped like someone used to carrying too many expectations and not enough truth. When I opened the door, he didn't smile. Hi, he said. Hi. He stepped in, glanced around, eyes catching on the quilt, the photos, the framed crayon drawing from Elliot. His jaw moved like he was biting back something that didn't know whether it was going to be an apology or a demand. I need to talk, he said. I gestured to the chair. Then sit. He didn't. He stood near the counter, hands shoved in his pockets. I know you changed the trust. I know the wedding deposit's gone. I know you're doing whatever it is you're doing with Elliot and Tim. He said it like I'd enrolled them in a cult. I raised an eyebrow. I'm seeing my grandchildren, they asked. I answered. He exhaled. You went behind our backs. No, I said calmly. I stepped out of your way. He paused. Julie's furious. Julie is entitled to her feelings. She says you're poisoning the boys against us. That made me laugh. Quiet, but sharp. You think I need to poison them? They're children, Mark. They notice things. They know who listens. He stepped back, jaw tightening. I'm not here to fight, he said finally. Then why are you here? He pulled something from his coat pocket and set it on the table. It was a paper, legal size, folded once. The house, he said. We're refinancing. I need you to sign off. I looked at the paper but didn't touch it. This is about the mortgage? Yes. I'm not on the mortgage. You're listed as a silent guarantor, he said. Because of the initial down payment. It's a legal formality. I nodded. And if I don't sign? His lips thinned. It delays the process. It could affect our rate, our timeline. And if I do sign? You're removed entirely. No strings. I stared at him a moment. That's what you want, isn't it? For me to be gone on paper the same way I'm gone from the house. He said nothing. I reached for a pen. He looked surprised. I'll sign, I said. On one condition. He waited. You leave the boys out of your guilt. If they want to see me, they see me. If they ask about me, you answer honestly. No narratives, no cold shoulders. Just the truth. He hesitated, then nodded. I signed. He folded the paper, almost reverently. When he turned to leave, he paused. I was wrong, he said quietly. About the yelling, about the house, about a lot of things. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't hear it, but because apologies are like seeds. They need time and tending. He reached the door. One more thing, he added, hand on the knob. That check, I still have it. I know. I want to tear it up. Don't. He turned, surprised. Give it to your sons, I said. One day. When they ask why their grandmother vanished and didn't stay gone, he nodded once, then left. That night, I wrote only one sentence in the notebook. You can't repair something with silence and paperwork, but it's a start to admit it broke. It's been 7 months now. I measure time differently here. Not in arguments or missed birthdays, but in cups of tea poured, puzzles finished, seedlings planted. In quiet mornings, in the rustle of newspapers, in the absence of being overlooked. The boys come often, sometimes together, sometimes one at a time. They don't always talk about home. I don't always ask. Our time is ours, not borrowed or bargained. Elliot's new story is called The Grandma Who Built a Castle with No Walls. Tim pretends he's too old for stories, but he listens anyway, from the couch, with his arms crossed and his mouth hiding a grin. A month ago, I took them to the city garden, showed them where Walter once planted daffodils without permission. We passed by my old building. It still has the same chipped railing on the 3rd floor. Neither of them asked why I left, but Elliot said, "You smile more now?" I said, "That's because I stopped waiting for permission." He wrote that down. He writes everything down. Last week, I hosted my first storytelling circle, not just as a speaker, as the one who starts it. 5 women, 3 men, 2 chairs too many, which I kept open anyway, for whoever needs to find their voice next. I told the story, not all the details, just the shape of it. A woman gave. A woman waited. A woman was erased in the margins of her own generosity. Then she remembered she had a name. They didn't clap. They didn't need to. We sat together in the silence after, and it felt like company. Yesterday, I passed by a mirror and didn't flinch. I didn't check for judgment in my eyes, didn't count wrinkles or remember how long it had been since anyone called me beautiful. Instead, I adjusted my collar, smoothed my hair, and said aloud, "I'm proud of you." Not because I escaped, but because I stayed gone. Because I didn't return just to be tolerated. Because I stopped asking to be needed and learned how to simply be. There's no epilogue where everything is forgiven. No neat ribbon. Mark still hesitates. Julie still defends the version of events that makes her feel kind. That's fine. I'm not here to correct their story anymore. I'm here to write mine. And if you're reading this, if any of this feels like something you've swallowed too often, then I'll say this plainly. You're allowed to take your voice back. You're allowed to stop being grateful for crumbs. You're allowed to build a life where your presence isn't a favor to anyone but you. Start with your name, then take one step, then another. You don't have to yell. You don't have to throw anything. Just don't wait to be welcome in places you already paid for. You're not a guest. You're the foundation. And if this story reminded you of something in your own life, if it stirred even a flicker of recognition, then I'll ask only this. Share it. Comment if you've ever been made to feel small in a room you built. Let someone else know they're not the only one. Because silence may be comfortable, but truth will set you steady.